How we doing, folks? Just like I said, we're gonna go ahead and take a stab at trying to make tamales homemade. I had originally intended on smoking the pork, but unfortunately, after reading the directions and everything, it's just not going to be possible. You actually have to cook it in like water with other ingredients and stuff like that. So as much as I wanted to dink with it and smoke and do all that other stuff, I'm a hard and strong believer that any recipe you get, the first time you make it by the book, exactly by the book. Once you've done it the first time, the way the directions are said, you have a standard. Once you have a standard, then you can turn around and tweak it. So being as how this is the first time I've ever made them without, watching my grandfather do it, so I'm going to have to follow the directions exactly. So the first thing we're going to need is 1¼ pounds of pork shoulder. I used a Boston butt just to cut up chunks. And you're going to want to cube that up into about 1-inch squares. You get all that in there good. Next thing you're going to need is 1/4 of an onion chopped. I've already chopped up my 1/4 of an onion, and it wasn't a really big onion, so I used it all because unfortunately you're not going to be using that in making it. You're just getting the flavor into the meat doing that. Next thing we're going to need is 1 clove of garlic, and just so I had to look it up and I had to do my homework on it, and I will help you guys. 1 clove of garlic is 1/2 teaspoon of minced garlic, which is always nice to know because I don't keep cloves of garlic in my house, but I do keep the little containers of minced. So there's 1 teaspoon of minced in that bad boy, and we'll close that up. We need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of salt. There we go. Got 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And the directions literally call for 4 peppercorns. Now, I'm pretty sure you can use regular pepper on this. Okay, Grandpa, 4 peppercorns. 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're in there. Now, the directions call for you to add water to this until everything is submerged, and then you want to slow simmer it until the meat is completely tenderized and everything else. So we're going to put some water to this bad boy and see what we get. So we put all the stuff into the pot, the garlic and all the whatnot, and that's what we got. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling all that meat out and shredding all that meat and leaving the broth and everything else alone. And in just a few moments, I'll explain why. We've gone ahead and shredded all of our pork. Our 1¼ pound, I don't remember what it was. All right. Next thing I need to do is put 3 tablespoons of butter into a skillet. So we got El Buttero. The actual recipe originally called for lard. And, in today's world, lard's just not going to cut it. So we're going to try it with the butter, and hopefully that will make it just as good, if not better, as everything's better with butter, right? All right, that's 3 tablespoons of butter. All right. So we're going to take that and drop it in the skillet. Now, hang on 1 minute and we'll grab the rest of the stuff. Right, next thing on our list after we put the butter in there and it's starting to melt, we're going to go put in 4 tablespoons of chili powder. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 big old monster things of chili powder. And 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. All right. And we got our little baggie of cumin that we got from doing the chorizo. So we'll use that up. A little fresher than the stuff I got. 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. All right, now I'm supposed to take this and cook it for 2 minutes. Add the meat and a cup of the broth of what we cooked the meat in earlier. Let me, let's see, where's my little spatula? There it is. All right. So, as you can see, is what we're working with right now. We're going to mix all that together. Yep, yeah, that ain't good. I'll do that shit no more. Right, so we're going to mix the butter in with the chili powder and the cumin. Okay, so we're looking at almost a paste. Yeah, it literally looks like a paste. I'll give it a shot. Just saying, just to let that cook for 2 minutes. I guess the whole purpose of that is to blend your flavors together, I guess. It's odd, but man, okay. We're going to pull a few extra little stunts with it. Alright. So, we about got our 2 minutes done. Okay. Now what we're going to add is 1 cup of broth from what we cooked the meat in. The garlic and onion and whatnot. Alright, so we got 1 cup of the broth. 1 cup of broth. It doesn't say to do this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to whisk it together real quick. Okay, it's got a good smell to it. Now we're going to add the meat. All right. Now add that all together. Let it mix together good, and it says simmer for 5 minutes and set aside. So we're going to get her simmering, and then we're going to fast forward on to the next step, which I'm 100% sure is going to be the maize outside of the tortillas. All right, folks, I'm going to let this sit and simmer and set it aside, and then I'll catch back up with y'all once we get to the making the dough. And of course, this is our final result, and this is going to be the wonderful guts of our tamales. We're letting that cool, and the next thing will be to work on the dough. We got 1 cup of lard, which we're using butter. We're going to be doing 2 cups of maize, which is corn flour, and 1.5 cups of cold water, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 of a cup of beef or chicken broth, and we're going with beef. So, first thing you do is we've got to whip this butter until it's pretty much smooth. Yeah, this is going to be a monster. I'll be right back. We're moving here. 1.5 cups of cold water. You're going to get that water cold. As you can see, we done whipped up the butter, the imitation lard. There's 1, half, 1, and 1.5. There's our 1.5 cups of water. I'm going to kick that up and get it running. Now, the next step we're going to do, we're going to drop in 1 teaspoon of salt. Don't go nowhere. I got it. Okay, 1 teaspoon of salt. One teaspoon of salt in there. And then we're going to start dumping in our maize. And the recipe calls for 2 cups. So we're going to run it at 1/2 cup. A cup. 1.5 cups. And 2 cups. And the only thing left is to add the beef broth. So I'm just going to add it now. I'll work the mess out later on. And we're going to whip this up and see what we come up with. And you're supposed to whip this until it gets light and fluffy. It'll almost have a spongy texture to it. So I'm going to go ahead and play with this until we get what we need. Ain't too hard. I don't have to teach you how to work a freaking mixer. And now it's time for the moment of truth. I've got my corn husks. Now with your corn husks, you're going to want to take your corn husks and you want to go ahead and soak them in warm water so it loosens them up a little bit. Also, I noticed that these corn husks actually had vinegar on them. So no bueno, not a good idea. All right, so what you do is you get you a glob of your maize and you put it right down in the middle and you're spreading a paste onto your corn husk. And I can already tell this is just going to be wonderful. All right, so you spread it out. I'm honest, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't remember how thick to make these. So I'm just going to put them out there as make them as thick as you want, because inevitably that's what's going to happen. Using the spatula for me just ain't going to fly. So I'm spreading it out, making sure that the corn husk itself is completely covered. All right, now we got that knocked out. We're going to get a little bit. I would say probably a tablespoon's worth. We're going to use this here big spoon for it. And we're going to put it right in the middle. As you can see, I'm going to put it just like that. We got the maize on there, and we got the meat. Now, we roll it over on itself. Like that. Now, you're always going to have leftover pieces. Make strips out of them. Okay, so you got to fold this over and tie it. Well, that's fun right there, boy. I'm telling you. Alright, first ones are always the learning curve. So we are learning on it. Ooh, yeah. Choke up a little bit on your bottoms of your tamales. You want to get up there about mid. I tried to get close to the bottom and I'm paying for it now. Right, so we got that part done. And then the top part, fold it over, tie it off, and that's what you got. Alright, so my first one sucks, but by the time I get to the last one, they'll look good. So, there's the first experiment. Been about 30 years, 40 years since I've done this. So when these are done, you turn around and you take them and you put them in a pot with a little bit of water and you're steaming them only. Once they get steamed and soft, then you open them up and then you get to enjoy your tamales. I'll cook some up we'll see what we get. And there's our finished product. Can't wait to find out if they taste as good as they used to. That was probably one of the most labor-intensive things I think I've ever cooked. But here's your finished product. And I'm going to do my favorite part. I'm really excited to see how these are because it was really neat making these because I probably haven't seen one of these in probably 40 years. And to know that my grandfather used to make them made it even neater, I guess. Texture's pretty close. Very good memories. Yeah, they turned out perfect. I could have done a little thicker on the maize, but yeah, it turned out good. It like rarely do I cook something that gets me kind of emotional, but yeah, this did. Thanks, folks. Bye. Hey, folks, and just like always, I wound up forgetting shit. When you're cooking the meat with the onions and the garlic and whatnot, when it is done, you set the meat with the broth and everything aside, and you let it completely cool down. And it's very important because it helps to infuse the flavors into the meat. I overlooked that. At least I overlooked saying it. I did it, but I overlooked saying it. So I really enjoyed making them. Like I said, it's been 30 years, 40 years since I've had one, and they turned out good. They didn't hold as firm as I had hoped because I was using butter instead of lard, but small price to pay for being a little bit healthy, I guess. Hey, I thank y'all so much. Hit the like if you want. Do what you got to do. I really appreciate it. It's really fun to do this for y'all. Take care. Bye.